All right, hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of Chaotic Neutral. I'm your host Artemis, joined as always by my constant co-host Sab. What's up, Sab? How you doing?
Good. Honestly, excited for this weekend.
Awesome. So we're going to talk LCS. We're going to talk things going forward. But first, we're going to talk about Motorola, our presenting sponsor of this episode and every episode. And I've actually been using their new Motorola Edge Plus. I've been dailying this phone, so carrying around with me every day, using it, taking pictures with it, chatting with it, whatever I use on my phone. I'm not like too intense with what I use my phone for, mostly just taking pictures and like using like email and like text and stuff like that. But I've had a blast. Like I really, really like this phone. I think that the screen is probably the prettiest screen I've seen on a smartphone. It has this like really insane OLED display that everything just looks crazy. So I've been using this phone a lot. It's got a lot of power under the hood. It's been kind of pulling me away from iPhone, but we'll see if it sticks. So yeah, thanks again for Motorola for sponsoring this video and all of these podcasts. We appreciate it. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into LCS this past weekend. So what kind of stuck out to you from this weekend, Sap?
Honestly, this weekend was kind of a roller coaster. I was really excited during our Immortals game. I was like, yeah, this is great. Like, I mean, I think I like blinked and the game was over and we had just absolutely demolished them. And then I kind of went down during that Dignitas game. I thought that we had it in the bag. I'm sure that you felt that as well in the midway point of that game. And,
Yeah.
it was a win that we should have got. So unfortunately that happened, but our team is notoriously good at recovering and saving mental. So was excited for that.
Yeah, it happens. Like, I think in the loss of Dignitas, like that was like it was pretty much a free win. They weren't really doing anything like good for the first 16 minutes of that game. I think we had like a 4K lead. We're basically just smashing them. They looked pretty dead in the water like they do in all their games. And then we basically just didn't execute. We made like three pretty serious mistakes, one after another, one at 18 minutes, one at 20 minutes, and then one before the third dragon, and essentially like gave them the game for free. And it always sucks to throw away free wins, but like, you could argue that it like feels worse because you know that the game was free and like you should have won it. But also it doesn't feel that bad because, it's not like Dignitas was the better team and like they beat us or something like that. Really, like we just beat ourselves and didn't execute on a new composition. The previous two wins, we played the exact same comp against Cloud9 and Immortals, which is kind of like happened that way. It's not something we planned on going into draft, but sometimes these things just work out that way. And those compositions, like they functioned really, really well with first setup. We had the Zoe, we had the Gangplank, and both these champions functioned really well around objectives. So that composition plays where, you get mid priority, you take control on the right side of mid, you get first setup with the dragon, you get 4 dragons, and then you win the game. And it's like, it's very, very easy. Like the blueprint for that comp is like very simple and it's the same. And then you'll notice that in our game against Dignitas, we're trying something new where we're playing topside was Set jungle, Galio mid, and Camille top. And we're playing this with Aphelios Thresh in the bot lane. And this composition is a bit different. Like you're not going to really guarantee mid priority in the mid game against an Orianna with either Aphelios or Galio. And the composition isn't really about getting first setup at the objective and like stacking 4 dragons as it is about playing side lane with the Camille and then using side lane pressure with Camille to generate flanks and generate like good team fights from like flank positions on midwave or from flank positions on objectives. Like a lot of times you want to let them start the objective first and like come in after the fact, like with better positional advantage for your team comp. So this is a composition that we weren't super comfortable executing on stage, and I think that showed in the loss, but it's not something that I was overly concerned about. Like I said, that game was a free win. If we were playing a standard composition, the game would have been, a 25-minute stomp the same way the Immortals game looked. So yeah, the sky's not falling or anything here in EG. But definitely sucks to lose. It always sucks to lose, but not too worrisome for me.
Absolutely. And what was your thoughts on Golden Glue's tweet after the game? He was kind of playing it off like technical issues. And here you're kind of saying draft. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, I'm not saying draft. Like, I think our draft was quite good.
Yeah.
Like, it was definitely like a winning draft.
Yeah.
We had a 4K gold lead. It's like actually decently easy to execute as well. So like our draft was totally fine. I'm not saying the draft was a problem. It was just something that we weren't as comfortable executing as like the previous style of composition. And I was just pointing out like the differences in those two team comps. But yeah, the technical difficulties definitely sucked. We were playing from our apartment setup, which is kind of like our gaming house office hybrid thing in the COVID era that we were forced to use. And just because of the infrastructure we have set up there, like one player has to be on Wi-Fi. That happens to be Dennis. The rest get hard lines, but for whatever reason, like only 4 hard lines are tolerated in that room, or else like nobody can play the game. So typically it is fine, but in this game, Dennis was constantly fluctuating between like 50 and 120 ping, which like, you know, is borderline unplayable. I probably think it is unplayable. And then not to mention, it's just totally throwing off his psyche. Like before he goes for anything, he has to check his ping in the top right of the screen. Like he's not feeling comfortable. He's constantly getting like pulled out of flow state and pulled out of the moment because he's thinking about something he doesn't normally have to deal with. So I definitely think that was like a aggravating factor or like a contributing factor, although I don't think it was necessarily the primary reason we lost that game. It was definitely frustrating for the guys, and it definitely was a contributing factor, despite not being the primary factor in the loss.
Totally agree. So to transition, I also kind of want to talk another game that we saw this weekend, and that was Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. What the heck was that Cloud9 draft? I want you to explain it to me, Connor.
Okay. I mean, it's not something super insane, right? It's like
Yeah.
So the Sona Lux started in EUS solo queue, where a Sona one trick and a Lux one trick decided to kind of join forces in the bot lane and you know, spread their disease to the rest of solo queue, which they did successfully. And yeah, it's the function of the team comp is very similar to Sona Taric or Sona Tahm Kench, which is something we saw in previous seasons. And basically, like, what this composition does is it falls behind in the early game. Like, typically, the enemy team is going to accrue a gold lead, whether it's by hard abusing the 2v2 with, like, a really oppressive 2v2 lane, whether it's, like, Draven Thresh, Draven Morgana, Caitlyn Karma. Like, there's a lot of different 2v2 strategies you could try. And that's one way to approach it, where you just take bot tower, swap, take top tower, swap, and you'll get, like, a 3k gold lead or something. Or you can just try and play topside, and you can play like a very self-sufficient AD carry like Ezreal. You can sort of 1v2 the Sona and the Lux with the Ezreal, and then you can play like Bard or Pyke. Even like Blitzcrank is decent. And you can like essentially roam the map with that support and play like 4v3 on topside and leave your AD carry in a 1v2 position on bot side where he can't really get punished by the Sona and Lux. Those are like the two approaches to how you counter it, but the way that the Sona Lux composition wins is it doesn't really matter how far behind you are as far as like gold goes, because of the combat power of all the heals and the shields is essentially like giving all of your other champions like free stats. So like you are getting like artificial gold like from the team fights because of the shields and the heals from the Sona and the Lux. You compare that with like a heavy dive comp, which is what we saw Cloud9 do. They played it with set mid, Hecarim jungle, Shen top, which I think is the less effective version of it. I think the more effective version is similar to what we saw with the Sona Taric, which was playing things like Jace Azir with it, where you're really like playing a ball comp and you're sort of abusing the range of the Sona ulti, Lux Q, Jace shock blast, like Azir soldiers, and like you definitely want to play in a tight-knit ball and grouped up, but you want to play with the range of these two champions because I think as you saw in the Cloud9 game, like when the Hecarim Shen is like diving in, like Sona and Lux aren't really following that. Like they can sort of like throw their stuff at the start of that fight, but they're not really able to stick with the Hecarim and the Shen, and you sort of get like a segmented fight rather than like a really nice cohesive ball comp, which is what that comp is, or like what those two champions are designed to do. So I thought their 1-2-3 was totally fine. The set and the Sona and the Lux came through. I would have preferred a different 4-5. I think if I was drafting, I would have definitely pivoted in a different direction of the 4-5. I wouldn't have played Hecarim Shen with that 1-2-3. But Team Liquid had an effective answer. Like I said, one of the things you can do is you can play Ezreal with a roaming support or just like an effective topside engage support like the Blitzcrank, and their 4-5 was totally fine. Like Syndra's got good range, good zone control, capable of sort of playing against Sona, I think, in team fights, and then like Mordekaiser for removing one of these threats, and it's also like Impact's comfort champ. It's probably his best champ in this meta. So Team Liquid's draft was totally fine. I think Cloud9 just wasn't entirely comfortable executing that draft, and also I don't think that it's an optimal draft for the Sona Lux. I don't think Hecarim Shen is necessarily even good with that 1-2-3. But yeah, that's the explanation. I think that credit to Cloud9 for trying it, I guess. We'll see how infected the rest of the NALCS is and whether or not we see more of this stuff in the stage games this weekend. But yeah, credit to Team Liquid. I think despite them falling behind pretty handily in that game, or at least like in a losing position to Cloud9's comp, I think that it was nice to see them battle back for that position and get the win.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think was like the star player of Team Liquid in that game?
I mean, it's kind of like a overplayed like theme, but like Jensen and Core are like carrying Team Liquid almost every game.
Yeah.
Everyone else is sort of like a role player on that team, and if Jensen and Core aren't having like pop-off games, like Team Liquid doesn't look very good. But you know, Jensen and Core are, world class players, and like, when you put them both on the same team, most likely one or both is going to have a pop off game in every game, which is why Team Liquid has 11 or 12 wins now. So I think that for me, it was definitely Core. Like, he got the Blitzcrank, which is like decent counter to the Sona and the Lux, and he was able to get so much free time in that game just because the nature of Cloud9's draft. Like I think that Sona Lux really enables a roaming support to take over the game, and Core JJ is one of the best roaming supports in the league, and he definitely showed his prowess in that game.
Absolutely. And like, to kind of move on from like C9 and TL, I mean, I thought it was a really exciting game. Again, like there's a lot of back and forth, and the drafts were interesting. I really hope other LCS teams don't follow those drafts, so I don't think they're like very fun. But a team that did exemplarily well this weekend was FlyQuest. They went 2-0, pushing themselves higher onto that ranking, getting them in a nice position for the upcoming playoffs. What do you think happened? What is like leading to their success?
For me, I think FlyQuest lives and dies by PoE. They're definitely like a PoE centric team. Like Ignar is like capable of having like a lot of pop off games. Like he's playing like in their first win, he was on his Rakan, which is like his like quintessential pick, the Chef's Kiss, Zhonya's Rakan, which like he's like kind of like patented, and nobody else is playing Rakan that way, but he's playing Rakan that way, looking for flanks. So it was nice to see again him finding success on that pick in the first game. They had Rakan Orianna, which is like a very simple, easy to execute teamfight composition coupled with the Ashe in the set, like really standard front to back with like really, really aggressive, decisive engage tools for that composition. It enables both their star players, which are PoE and Ignar. And then you look at their second draft against GG, you have set first pick and then Aphelios Azir on the 2-3 on blue side, which is like, again, like this is already like a really, really powerful long range teamfight comp where like the Aphelios and the Azir complement each other really well. Like Azir is able to peel for Aphelios. They're both doing damage from like 800 units away. And then on the 4-5, no surprise, Ignar's on Rakan. Like there's a pattern emerging, right, guys? And then you have a tank at the top lane. So their compositions are always very standard. Like they do have an element of frontline in every draft. Like they have PoE on a long range control mage. They put Wild Turtle on a champion he's comfortable on. Just a meta carry like Aphelios and Ashe. And then they put Ignar on a playmaker that's going to complement PoE's champion. And then they play around mid really well with like a 3-man stack where Santorin and Ignar are always thinking about PoE first. And like, what can I do for PoE? How can I enable him to like play well in this game? How can I make PoE carry? And they have a very cohesive game plan. They play the same way every game, and I think teams give them too much or too little respect in drafts. Like, don't give Ignar Rakan, and like he's not going to look like the same player. That's like one example. Like I'm not saying if you have to ban it or anything, like there's no like must ban champ in the game, but like I think they're getting away with a bit too much in a lot of these drafts, and they're getting probably like literally exactly how they draw it up in practice in their prep. I think they're getting on stage, so teams should think about more creative ways to draft around FlyQuest, but no discredit to the players. I think that also their players were played well that weekend, and they definitely deserve the 2-0.
Absolutely. I mean, I was going to say, and this is something that you've already said, so I'm kind of echoing your statement. It's just like, I feel like teams just don't respect FlyQuest draft like at all. They just kind of get what they want. Like there's nothing surprising, right? Like coming out of that, in my opinion. And then they just execute something that they've been practicing on for like the whole week. Like, you know, there was, I think, opportunities for teams to kind of take wins off them, but instead, like FlyQuest is just slowly creeping up that ranking. So hopefully this weekend we'll see a little change in that. But good job to those players and their coaches.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we'll see. I think that their FlagQuest, like their priorities were really clear, at least for the past patch. And like now we're on a new patch week coming to this weekend. So, and some teams get, including EG, gets a short week of practice before their Friday game. So whenever, this has happened twice for us, where we've had a Friday game on a new patch week, which is just absolutely, I can't be more annoyed with how that schedule kind of falls into place. But, we're dealing with it, and I think we'll be ready come this weekend.
Yeah, right. What the heck? Handing us a bad hand or something? I don't understand.
Nah, it's all good. Like, it is what it is. Like, you can't really, like, be upset about the schedule. You just got to do your best with the tools you have, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. So, I guess, with the new patch, what are we expecting for these upcoming games? Like, is there anything that fans should be looking out for?
No, I mean, even if there would be, I wouldn't tell you. Sorry, fans.
True.
I mean, like, I think there'll be, like, you'll probably see some new picks, I think, from both EG and other
Mhm.
teams. I think that like we'll see like some things coming up in the meta. That's all I'll really say. You'll probably see some new picks, but yeah, and hopefully some dubs, some wins as well. But other than new picks and wins are the things to watch for sure.
Totally. Um, is that really like just wins and new picks? Is there like anything else you kind of want to talk about? Like, is there any like matchups that we should be like watching or?
Well, we play TSM on Friday and then FlyQuest on
Mhm.
Sunday, so it's a pretty fun week for us. I mean, both TSM and FlyQuest are great teams. Like we just talked about FlyQuest, TSM's no pushover either. So
Mhm.
this is going to be like a pretty big test, I think, for us. It's like one of our hardest weekends, I think, of the second half of the split. Kind of
Mhm.
rivals the C9 Team Liquid weekend, not quite at that same level, but it's definitely close. So yeah, it's going to be an intense weekend. Like practices have been intense this week for sure. And yeah, like know that these are some really tough games and that we're working hard and hopefully we pick up the wins.
Absolutely, and hopefully, you know, the new setups for the players as well support them. So
Yes,
I'm
we are.
excited
That's
to
true.
see that.
We did move back to our office this week. Following all kinds of crazy standards for anti-COVID. So we're happily safe and very very happy and blessed to be back in the office.
Mhm. Yeah, EG does not take that lightly. I know that we even have like a channel for like snack delivery to make sure there's like social distancing involved and like
Mm,
making sure that everything stays sanitized. So I'm excited to see that, and hopefully our guys feel a little bit more geared up and ready in their like work-life balance environment.
mm.
So excited to see that. How is EG kind of feeling in the second half of the LCS split so far? And what are your expectations coming post regular season?
I'm feeling fine for sure. I think we've had a really challenging summer split, challenging second half of the summer split, where like we went and made a pretty risky roster move to maybe pick up some more wins and give us more optionality going into playoffs. So like we're not locked for playoffs yet, but as long as we execute and practice and execute on stage, like we will make playoffs, and then we can kind of figure out where we want to go from there and what direction we want to take. So it's been a challenging summer split and a challenging second half. I know it's been like tiring for the staff, tiring for the players, but expect a strong EG come playoffs. Like I'm super excited to get out of best of ones, get into best of fives, and really like that's where like I think like coaching staffs and front office staffs really shine in best of fives, where you can really work on your preparation, you can out prep opponents, and then you can make adaptations with that best of five and really like win a lot of drafts. Especially now with the new format where loser has side selection, like you really have to be on your toes and you really have to prepare well if you want to be stringing together consecutive wins in the best of five series, which I think is really, really important for momentum. You don't just want to be ping ponging back and forth like that in a best of five. You do want to win consecutive games. So yeah, I'm looking for best of fives. Can't wait for that. Expectations, expect us to be working hard and expect us to win and go deep in playoffs. Like I still think we're a strong team, regardless of the loss to Dignitas. Like I just write that off completely. Dignitas is a weak team. I think that their biggest accomplishment from spring and summer will be beating Evil Geniuses in the regular season. So we can kind of tip our caps to them. If that's what you want to put on your placard, then that's fine. But our aspirations are a little bit higher. So expect us to go deep in playoffs. Expect us to win some games, and yeah, we'll see what happens. As far as Worlds goes, like I know that Worlds is going to happen. I just truly believe that. We saw that Beijing, I think, just put out a statement that they're hosting 3 esports like championships in the next couple months now that their COVID situation is under control. One of them is like Clash of Kings, or one of them is like the most popular mobile game. I forget the exact name, but they're hosting that world championship there in Beijing, as well as 2 others. We saw this press release coming just a day or 2 ago. So that bodes really well for me. We haven't heard anything from Riot about whether or not Worlds is still happening, what it will look like, but since that these other esports events are happening in China before Worlds is scheduled to happen, and China has COVID at least reportedly relatively under control, I'm pretty confident that Worlds is going to happen. So thank our lucky stars for that one, but I'm excited for it.
Absolutely, same here. Really hope that it happens, just because finally, like some international competition, right? This is what every team around the world is like really vying for, is that world spot, and it'd be amazing to have EG there. So
For sure.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Connor, for speaking with me today. As always, it's really awesome to talk to you as well as the fans who are listening. Really appreciative, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. See ya.